Hi, this is an unexpected launch, a show about stories and the people behind them. I'm speaking with people who've gracefully navigated unexpected life circumstances. These are stories of resilience, connection, and community, stories of lives being rewritten, reimagined, and rebuilt. I'm Kirsten, and today's story is about Matthew and Shay. Matthew is navigating a kidney transplant and rejection during an unprecedented pandemic. They are leading the discussion on the importance of human connection and lifting people up. You may have met Shay. She was my guest on episode 22, and she's the host of The Shay Show. I'd love for you to listen to our inspiring conversation that was centered around race in the United States. And Matthew, Shay's husband, is a father and a fighter. He has an autoimmune disease called IgA nephropathy, and this is a condition that leads to kidney failure. About 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, Matthew underwent a kidney transplant and has been navigating recovery in the midst of a pandemic. Matthew and Shay, welcome to an unexpected launch.
Hi,
Hey,
how are you?
thanks for having us.
Thank you for being here. Matthew, I'm going to take us back a little bit. This was in the spring of 2014. And at that point, you were an active kidney failure requiring dialysis about 4 hours every other day. So, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about your diagnosis of IgA nephropathy?
Yes, well, it actually took a very long time to come to that. I experienced a lot of problems probably over the last 10 or 15 years and never really knew what was going on until finally my primary doctor realized that my uh, kidney function was a little low compared to what it should be. And so then she put me in touch with a nephrologist. And it, After about 3 months of waiting to get in to see him, he was finally able to diagnose the issue.
So when you heard that diagnosis, I mean that had been a long time coming. And
Yeah.
so when you finally had that diagnosis, how did that feel?
Well, it was good to know, but it was also not so good to know. It's like, that you got a tough road ahead of you because you've got to face a tough transplant issue. I have to talk to my wife about this stuff and let her know what's going on. And just a lot goes along with it.
Mhm. Well, and then
Wow.
dialysis. So for so many people who don't really understand the true impact of dialysis, can you tell us a little bit about just the physical and the emotional toll of dialysis?
Right. So basically, what you have to look forward to is each week you have dialysis at least 3 times a week if you go into the center, and those are 4-hour sessions each time. And that's just on the machine. Of course, you've got to be there 30 minutes early, 30 minutes after. So it really takes about 5 hours out of your day to do it. Um, it is emotionally, it can be very difficult at times because there's some days you just don't want to go. You're just like, "Ah, I am tired of this. I'm sick of it. I don't want to go today." But you have to push through because you don't really have an option. Until you can get a transplant, you can't go but so long off of dialysis and you won't be here anymore. So um, it can be tough. It's tough knowing that in the back of your head. It's like, I have to do this just to live, you know.
Mhm. So let me ask you, those days where you didn't want to go, and believe me, I so understand, and I think that there are so many people who are going to relate to that, whether it's dialysis or another type of chronic disease where you get tired of treatment, and though
Yeah.
you know it's life saving, that can be really difficult to push yourself forward. So how did you get yourself in the car into the center on those days where you just weren't feeling it?
I just basically just had to put my head down and just do it. There was really no secret to it. Nothing that I did special. I just had to get up and go. And once I get over there, I'm okay. Dealing with those needles and stuff, it's not a lot of fun. Those things are huge.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, it was it was difficult at times to get up and go, but I definitely was able to push forward because I knew I had to. You know, I have family that I want to see, you know, in the future, and I just want to be here as long as I can be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, and
Mhm.
Shay, I know that it wasn't just difficult on you, and as is the case with any kind of illness, it's not just the person who's affected, but the family as well. And you at that time were caring for your daughter. You became Matthew's caregiver and the primary income earner. And one of your darkest days was learning that Matthew was going to need a transplant. And you felt like you were carrying Mount Everest on your back. Can you
Yeah.
take us back to that time and share a little bit about what that was like for you?
So, um, you know, whew, this is wow. This is bringing up a lot, like things that I've just grown used to living. And then you're asking these questions. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. When I think I started feeling the Mount Everest on my back when we knew that it was a kidney disease, and we knew that it was destroying his kidney. I think at the time when they figured it out, you were like down to like 60%,
Yeah,
like
upper 50s, I think.
yeah, okay, so like 50-ish
Mhm.
percent. So that was a little shocking because you go from like you knew there was just a lot of things that were going wrong, but we didn't know what was wrong. So once we found out it was a kidney disease, if I'm honest, I remember feeling two things. I remember feeling a sense of relief, like we finally knew what was wrong.
Mhm.
And then I remember initially feeling a disconnect with the magnitude of what was just told to me. Like someone said, okay, hey, by the way, no more lollipops. Okay. Like it wasn't terrible in the moment. It was like, whew. And then it wasn't terrible. And then the day to day living, you know how sometimes time allows things to become more real for you? So time allowed it to become more real. And I had to go out and I had to start working because he couldn't work. And it wasn't even so much that he needed a transplant that made me feel like Mount Everest. It was the living with someone who I knew was an active kidney failure. And we were seeing different things like old nails fall off, like different things were just falling away, things that had been a part of his constitution, his ability, were just falling away. So it was all of that. You know, he is 6'4". He'd always been like a big guy. And I think to see if I could tell a little story when it got at its height for me, to see him lose his ability to do things that I had grown used to or expecting of him or taking for granted. We used to have, so on Tuesdays are garbage days. Tomorrow is garbage day for us, garbage and recycling day. I think I told you this story. And the bins would be down at the street. And it took everything to get them down the street. You know, our daughter's not particularly listening. I need you to help me. So oftentimes what it looked like was I would work a full day of work. I would come home and I'd have to put these damn garbage bins down by the street because he physically couldn't do it. We weren't, rallying our child enough. So she really wasn't helping. And I just remember feeling so overwhelmed. And what was indicative of my overwhelmness was after Tuesdays, Wednesdays, typically on Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning, people bring their bins back up to their house. We have a very long driveway. And I used to look at the quality of my life and ascertain where I was in losing my mind and what day were we at, and those bins were still there. And oftentimes it would be Saturday or Sunday, or maybe Monday again, and the bins were still there. So it was all of that it was climbing up a mountain that I didn't really know what the length of it was. I didn't know how high it was. I didn't know when I was going to breach the clouds. It just was a lot. It was leading to the full kidney failure that I think I felt the most of it.
Mhm.
Knowing that he was going to have a transplant was the carrot at the end of the stick for me for the longest time.
Yeah, for sure.
So Shay, I wanted to touch on something, and that's becoming a caregiver, because here's the person that you love, and you're seeing Matthew not being able to do the things that you had become used to, that were part of the rhythm of your relationship. And there's so much pressure on the caregiver, and none of us are trained to be a caregiver. We don't have the medical background. There's so much, as there was so much that was unknown for you.
Yeah.
On those days when it was Sunday and you were looking at those trash cans at the end of your driveway, what kept you going? Where did that strength come from? Because you pulled him back in at some point. Where did that strength come
Yeah.
from?
Well, I knew I had to keep going. And what is interesting to me is that the harder life became and the more that was required of me, the harder and more committed my constitution was to doing it. And I do believe in God. And so I did feel empowered by an energy that is bigger and greater than myself. And many times I wasn't even conscious of it. I just saw the bins, and with a heavy heart and often tiredness and frustration, I would go down and get the bins and bring them up because it had to be done. We can do hard stuff. We can do exceptionally hard stuff that you don't want to do, that you don't even consciously process that you can do, you can do. So where did it come from? I think one, it comes from, I think we're created to do some hard shit. And then two, I think that leaning into the unknown, unseen, ever present, all being that I call God or the divine, that was critical.
Yeah. I think that many of us have a strength inside of ourselves that we don't even know is there until we're called to rely upon it.
And that's that's the gift of difficult life. That's the gift of difficulty. That's the gift of trauma. That's the gift of hardship. The gift of hardship is that you will see a part of yourself that you've never seen before. Like, I was talking to someone, I can't even remember what, and I did not perceive myself as a strong, brave, bold person. I saw myself as a people pleaser, as not saying what I wanted to say when I wanted to say it. I saw myself as being crushed by the very things that I was living through. And when this person was telling me how they saw me, and I wasn't even me like going, how do you see me? They were just like, man, you are just so strong. And I was like, who are they talking about? Who are they talking about?
You're talking to me.
Right. Who are you talking about? Because you ain't talking to me. And the gift of that, my point is, the only way that I could even be perceived as that is they were watching me go through hard stuff that I didn't even realize were crushing, because to be crushed was not an option.
Yeah.
I mean, it just wasn't. We have to eat, we have to live.
Yeah. So, Matthew, as we've talked about a little bit, and we've alluded to this, because your kidneys were failing, you needed a transplant. You can't be on dialysis indefinitely. And being placed on a transplant list is an arduous process. This is not a quick process. Can you share what it was like, just the process of knowing you needed a transplant and then waiting for that perfect match to arrive? What was that like?
Yeah, it was a lot. Yeah, we had, there was just lots of tests and things that you have to do, because basically, in order to get a transplant, you have to be pretty healthy other than your kidney. I mean, you can't have any other issues. If you got other issues, they won't let you have one. So it's, I have to go through all these heart tests, stress tests, electrocardiograms, you name it. I had to do it. And dye tests and
Yeah.
all kinds of things, you know. So it took probably 6 months of testing, don't you think?
Yeah. I mean, it was a lot.
Um, 6 months of just going through stuff to find out if you were even going to be eligible.
I mean, then you have to go to class. You
Yeah.
remember you go to a seminar.
Yeah.
And that's when I had the, I mean, this is a little joke aside, but like in the middle of all of this, it was just like, you feel like when I went to law school and prepared to go to law school, and you had to take the LSAT, study for the LSAT, take the LSAT, send it out, try to get like, it felt like that. It felt like a very rigorous process. And here we are in the seminar. And I just remember, see, this is how life is. This is how good God is. There's always that moment of levity. We're sitting there and I just can't take it anymore. And I remember, I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. So it's not the Pacific Northwest. We know you guys get way more snow. But these people, when there is snow or ice, like we lose our minds down here. They're like, close down the city. No school today. We'll let you know when school starts. And that day, we were in the middle of a snowstorm. And so that this thing that had been on the calendar for months was like, hey, it may or may not happen. Keep calling into this 1-800 number and we'll keep you up to date, on the Weather Channel. And so I remember calling and they're like, oh, yep, it's going. So it's in an hour. We get in the car and we're driving there, and you get there and the depth of what is happening is that you are going to a seminar with other people who are in active kidney failure, who are learning the ins and outs about navigating the kidney versus kidney transplant world, what that will look like, what that process is, because it's not an intuitive process. It's not one that is based on intelligence. It's not one that's based on education. It's purely based on, have you done this before? And hospitals have a very nebulous, it's not this very clear, direct line to it. And every hospital has its own processes. So here we are, we're in this place. And that's when I also learned how much kidney disease affects Black people, is because I didn't think about kidney disease before, but every room we walked into, Matthew was always one of the only white people in there. And it started hitting me. I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So A, there are a lot of people affected by this. B, the vast majority are people of color. Mm-hmm. And it just felt more real. And so we're in there and I'm feeling a bit somber and a bit overwhelmed. And they show this video of this young football player who's from Charlotte, North Carolina, who actually played for Seattle. Yeah, I think he played for Seattle. And he came back home for summertime and he was just messing around with one of his friends in a truck or something. Somehow he's not driving. The truck is hit. He receives a mortal wound. And when they come to get him at this site of the accident, it is really, it's very obvious to the medics that he is not going to live, but he's a football star. They get him to our main hospital, and he's pronounced dead on arrival. And he is from a simple family, not wealthy, not educated people. And his mother knew instinctively, I donate everything. She donated everything that could be donated. And she wasn't someone who had a lot of emotion. And then a year later, she's brought back to the facility. And there is over 100 people there, the vast majority of whom are white. And they have received something of love from him. His eyes, his veins, something. And she breaks down. And so this is a moment of we're all like crying in the room, where you're seeing the power of organ donation. Yeah. You don't need it, give it.
Yeah. What a lot of people don't appreciate, when you receive a diagnosis of a chronic illness or are being diagnosed for cancer, it is almost like a full-time job to manage that diagnostic pathway and oftentimes treatment. And I think sometimes people don't appreciate the time that is involved and the effort that is involved. And people think, oh, well, you got a breast cancer diagnosis. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. But what they don't realize is somebody is at the number of steps that it takes, and then Shay is you as the caregiver. And I just want people to have an appreciation that the need that comes as a community member. How can
Yeah.
you step up? How can you be that supportive friend or family member? And I think it's people just don't appreciate because they don't know. And so I appreciate you, Matthew and Shay, opening up and giving us that window into really how it does take over for that period of time. It really takes over your life.
It does.
You know, I think that organ transplant, it is, as you said, Shay and Matthew, it is such a gift. And Matthew, I'd love to just hear from your perspective. What would you like people to know what it is like to be the recipient of a donated organ?
Well, in my case, I had a good friend of mine who actually stepped up and decided to get tested to see if he could donate his organ to me. And that process was long too. Took him a long time to go through the same kind of things I was going through. And it was a lot. And to me, it was just probably one of the most amazing things I've ever been through, to have somebody care that much,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and want to help you that much. You know, getting a deceased organ, I guess, is great, you know, but having a living donor give you one, there's a lot more that goes into that, you know.
It was overwhelming.
It was very overwhelming.
I mean, he get perfectly healthy guy.
Yeah.
First of all, that he was a match, because just because you're somebody's friend, you can't give an organ.
Right. Yeah. Usually you have to find a family member or somebody.
It's like 1 in 200,000.
I forget what the odds are, but the
1 in
odds of my
120,000.
friend being able to give me a kidney were very,
Slim.
very slim.
Yeah.
But it worked out that he could. And so our blood types were close enough to match, and the antibodies and everything that had to match. I mean, it was a lot of stuff that had to match in order to say this is a go. And there were several times where it was a go, and then it wasn't a go, and then it was a go, and then it wasn't a go. And it was like, man.
Emotionally, I'm curious. I want to know what you felt. Were you sad? Were you depressed? Were you?
All of it. I mean, I went through periods of depression just because, you know, you're looking at something that, I mean, it affects every part of your life. Like, just not being able to do the things to help out around the house. It makes you feel useless, worthless, you know? And so you start having those feelings, and you're like, man, I used to could just jump up and do this and feel fine. And now if I try to jump up and do that, I can't breathe within 30 seconds, because it affects your breathing, it affects all kinds of things. So
Things that you don't even know.
yeah, you don't even know, like, this shortness of breath is coming. And
Eyesight, hearing.
yeah, everything.
Who knew?
Yeah.
Everything starts to diminish a little. And so you have to, you know, you have to deal with all those things. But as far as, you know, feeling, I mean, it was just a great feeling to know that my friend would step up for me like that. And it was a really great feeling to know when it all came together, and that, you know, that he was going to be able to actually do it. And then we started making plans for it. So, you know, that became more encouraging. And like Shay said earlier, the kidney was kind of the carrot at the end of the thing, because you're put on dialysis, and they tell you, and remember that same meeting too is where they told us the majority of people only be on dialysis for 5 years and then they die.
I will never forget that number. I will
Yeah.
never forget that number.
Yeah.
That was just like horrible to see. Like, and it was written. It was written. It was like in that notebook, and it said, the average person lives 5 years on dialysis. So if you do not get, essentially, if you do not get a kidney transplant within 5 years of being on dialysis, bye-bye.
Yeah.
That's
And it's not for everybody, but on average. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, some people have gone 20, 30 years on dialysis, but for the most part,
the averages of all of those numbers.
right.
5 years.
But a lot of that too is because most people are older than me when this happens.
Yeah, you were young.
And also they have other issues too. That's the reason probably why they didn't get a kidney. Because if you have diabetes or any other thing going on besides, you're not going to get a kidney. And so those people they're pretty much relegated to dialysis, and they know it, which is very difficult. Um, at least for me, I was on dialysis knowing that I had a friend who was trying to give me a kidney, and there was a possibility of, 6 months, a year from now, that this might work out. And it wound up working out. Unfortunately, the kidney never functioned inside my body the way it did in his. And the disease that I have kind of over time just began to.
Pretty quickly though.
Yeah, it was pretty quickly.
Like 2 months in, and it's like they found, I think 2 months in, you had a biopsy.
Yeah, they kept expecting it to, what they call it, kick in. They're like, it's going to be dormant for a little while, but then it's going to kick in. And so we, when it was operating at 30%, we were like, okay, it's going to kick in. And everybody's telling me how much better I'm going to feel.
And that week, I remember though, I remember you being like, whoa, you were standing right there and you're like, I think I feel what people feel.
Yeah.
Like I think I feel how you feel sometimes, Shay. Like I feel like I can do stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember just looking at him and being so excited and so in awe, like, yes. So for it to go from that to that have been the peak. And then every week when he got tested, it just kept scaling back. God, it was horrible.
Yeah.
That was horrible.
Yeah, it was tough going through that because, the carrot that you have been waiting on is now all of a sudden not doing what it was supposed to do.
Dead.
So now you know that you're being told you're going to have to go back on dialysis. You're going to have to go back through the kidney process in order to get a second one. And now for me, a lot of times there's not even a carrot of the new kidney, because if I get one, I know that my body is going to attack it, and which is
well,
not the best feeling.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt him. But I did, because I was there. I did ask his, and that's a part of being the caregiver, because this disease saps him from so much. And he already is not probably the glass half full kind of gal that I am, and you couple that with this disease. I'm aware that my reaction, my response, my actions, they set the tone for my family. I'm aware of that. I'm aware that my actions set the tone for him. So that is really a horrible feeling to feel like, well, what else? Like, who cares if I get another kidney? My body's just going to do the same thing. So then we were going back through this process. They've got him, good news, he's now back on the kidney transplant list. Good news, about 2 months ago, the kidney transplant team convened and they actually approved him. It might be even 3 months ago. Approved him for a kidney transplant. So the first step is you have to get on the transplant list. The second step is that the team who does transplant, the removal of the kidney, the placement of the kidney, has to go, yeah, we're going to approve you to be a candidate that can go through this process again. So that happened. But then your lady, Carolyn, she's like one of there's so many different people and assistants and
because
social
there's so
workers.
much more besides the physical. I mean, you've got the financial aspects and all these. So you have social coordinators, you have financial coordinators.
And I don't know them from Mitch either. I don't know them.
And you have your main kidney coordinator. And I mean, there's just so many people, and you are in the doctor's office probably 5 days a week, several hours a day. It just seems like it's never going to end. But,
I asked her, because she said, I was like, tell me the truth. Because we had to have our own conversation. Apparently he had to talk with her and I had to talk with her. And I was at work. So I was like, well, she can call me at work, but I can only ask. So she called me and I was like, I can get it. And I answered it and we were talking and I said, okay, I need you to tell me the truth. I want to be excited about this kidney. But if in this route, we're going the cadaver route, which that's another thing I want to say.
Yeah.
This route, we're going the cadaver route, but I wanted to know, tell me the truth. Is this even, should I even be excited? Because there is no cure for his autoimmune disease. There is no cure for it. So it is always going to be in his body. So the pessimist, or maybe even the realist, one could argue, says inside of me, what's the point? Because his body's going to do exactly to that future kidney that it did to this current one. And you know what she said to me? So I said, I need to know, have you ever seen someone with my husband's disease where it worked the second time? She paused, and I'll never forget it. She said, we have. We don't understand why, but we've seen it work on the second time and even the third time. I have seen it. And that's all I needed. I just needed someone to tell me they had seen it. And then I came home and I was like, we still have this carrot. It still can happen. And it seems to be with his particular disease, with the little research and people I've spoken with who are deep into the research, his disease seems to have a better response to a cadaver kidney.
Really?
Yes.
I haven't heard
I
that.
told you that. I told you the lady, I met a lady who is actually, she is in Seattle, and she works for, you guys have a big clinic and research facility there, and I forget the name of it, but it's like a big name. And she was telling me, she dove into it, and actually she sent me a whole bunch of articles on it. Yeah. And so regardless of that, you know what was really helpful is that this counselor paused and she told me she had seen it. They don't understand why, but they have seen it. And sometimes it happens on the second, and sometimes it happens on the third, and they're not quite sure why. Medicine, that's the artistry of it. It is not we don't know. We're learning as we go.
It's a practice.
It's a practice.
Yeah.
It truly is.
Yeah. So Matthew, I have to ask you, and by the way, I want to just pause and say that I'm so appreciative of you both so openly sharing how this feels, because I know there are other people who will listen to this and find themselves in your shoes and not feel so alone. And so I really appreciate you being so open and so vulnerable. So Matthew, you went through the process the first time. It's undergoing a transplant, leading up to the transplant and post-transplant. It is very difficult for anybody who's not aware. It is just an absolute undertaking, and the medications that you need to take after the transplant to make sure that your body doesn't attack and reject that organ. It's vials. It's so much. So you've been through this once. It didn't work out as you had hoped that it would.
Right.
How are you thinking about this second one, especially now hearing this has worked, maybe the second time, maybe the third time? How do you keep yourself focused on moving forward, and what's going through your mind?
To be honest with you, at this point, I just take it day by day. I know that I've got dialysis, tomorrow, and then I have it the next day. I'm not even really focused on the kidney because I can't think about that. I can't look that far forward and say, hey, this kidney's going to work or it's not going to work, because then I just go into this place of, not feeling good. So I don't know, it's tough. And and people also have to realize too, just to kind of go back, not only is this happening with your body and happening with the new kidney, but now you're sitting there and you've got your best friend who's just given you one of his organs, and now your body's destroying it, and you're like, why did I get his organ, right? Why did I take his organ if my body's going to do this? You don't know it's going to do that, but there was a possibility that it would, and the possibility definitely came true on the first one. But at the same time, you're going through the emotions of, and then how's he feel? Like, I wasted a kidney on this guy, and that's what you're feeling. I doubt he felt that.
No, and I even
And,
asked
and
him
we've
that
talked to him about that. I mean, he didn't really probably feel that, but
at
that's what
all.
I'm thinking that he's probably feeling.
We did.
And so you start feeling like more of a loser. It's like I can't make anything work here. So that in itself is a whole nother aspect of it.
Mm. Well, and I am 100% certain that he doesn't feel that way. I mean, he went into it knowing that this may or may not work. And as you said, it's medicine and we don't know, but we give it our everything as he was doing. And I would surmise that he would do it again in a
He said
He
so.
said he would. Yeah.
He
Yeah,
said he
for
would.
sure.
If he had another kidney to give, he would do it again.
Yeah.
He, without question. It was us who felt that, but
Yeah.
just felt it because you're like, it seemed initially to feel like a waste.
Right. And you build in your mind this fairy tale ending of, hey, this is going to work out perfect. And then when it doesn't, you're like, man, it's tough, because then the road ahead of you is what it has already been.
Yeah.
And I haven't even gotten into all of the stuff that happens before you go on dialysis. Your sickness, your every morning waking up,
Throwing up.
yeah, nauseous,
Mhm.
just all kinds of things going on with your body every single day, and you never know what's coming. And so that part is difficult. And then on top of that, when we were trying to salvage this kidney, and when we were probably about 6 months after the surgery, my doctor's like, we can try this one drug. It's called Cytoxan, and it's basically a drug for chemotherapy. So then he put me on that for 3 months. So then I'm dealing with chemotherapy issues. My hair's falling out, those kinds of things.
The skin is gray.
Skin is gray. It was,
It was hard.
Yeah, you're just going through a lot. And I'm sure not everybody has to go through that, but my road has been that.
The last time we saw each other, he was actively on that drug.
Yeah. So, but anyway, you can't stay on that forever either.
Right.
So what it did is it actually slowed down the process of the deterioration of the kidney. It kind of leveled off while I was on it, but it didn't really get better. It just kind of stayed the same.
Mhm.
But
And you had so many other
but you could
things.
only take that stuff for 3 or 4 months, and then it's just too toxic for your body. So once I came off of it, then the deterioration came right back. And so I think that was probably about a year ago, around January, that I came off of it. And by July, I was back on dialysis. So,
Mhm.
And and in the midst of a pandemic, of
Right.
course. And do I recall
Okay.
that you are doing dialysis at home, or are you going into a clinic?
I am doing it at a clinic. I have thought about going the home route, but at this point, I haven't gone that route, just because I don't want to bring the hospital into my house. This is like my one place of reprieve, and I'm going to the hospital so much. I'm at seeing different doctors. I just don't want that machinery in my house and all the supplies that go with it. I mean, you basically have to dedicate a whole room of your house to this, so it becomes like a little dialysis unit,
Mhm.
And I just didn't want. I haven't wanted to do that.
And you thought about all of that in terms of the caregiver.
Yeah.
It ups my ante.
Right. And
There's
it's even
more I
on
gotta
her.
do.
There's more on her, because now I'm talking about, right now when I go to dialysis, the techs there, they come and they do all the needle work and getting all the stuff inside your graft, and operate the machinery and all that. But now if you do that at home, all that is what you have to do. So now on top of, and also you have to do more of it. You have to do 5 days a week. You can do 3 hours a day instead of 4, but they want you to do it at least 5 days a week. And I'm like, that's almost every day that I'm doing this. And I'm having to do everything that goes along with it myself, clean the machine, stick myself with the needles.
And we know what his abilities are right now. So truly,
Yeah.
who would really have to do all that?
Yeah, and it probably would put a lot more on Shay even. And so I would rather just go up to the techs, let them do it, and at some point, if it looks like this is going to be a really long term thing, then I'll may at that point decide to bring it home, just because it frees up your life a little bit, because you can do it when you want to do it. You don't have to be on a schedule. So if I want to do it for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours at night or whatever, I can do that. Not that that would be fun, sticking yourself twice a day, but and it also frees you up if you want to travel, because these machines are portable. So, if you have to be somewhere for basically 5 hours every other day, you're not going on a lot of vacations, right? You're not going many places. You don't have time to. So that is one thing that would be an advantage of doing the home dialysis, is that you can take the machine with you, you can go travel, you can do whatever you want to do. It gives you a little bit more freedom in life. Right now, you just kind of feel tied down to, I'm either in my house or I'm in the dialysis unit, and that's pretty much what every day is like.
And do you feel concerned with the pandemic about going into a clinic, or are you feeling that now they've got protocols in place that you feel safe enough?
Well, I mean, it was certainly a concern in the beginning, because I was already on immunosuppressants. So my immune system was already operating at about probably 25% of what a normal person would be. So I had already experienced issues with that. Had viruses popping up in my body that I didn't even know were there, just because my regular immune system would fight them off. But when I lowered it down to 25%, I remember just I had to go in the hospital for 3 days because of a parvovirus. And you're thinking, that's a dog virus. But no, there's a human parvovirus
that
that
75,
lives,
80% of us
yeah,
have it.
it lives in 75 to 80% of the people.
But we're
which I
fine.
didn't know, but you're fine because your immune system handles it. But
Isn't that a miracle?
when you decrease that immune system, that stuff begins to pop out. And so I remember getting deathly ill.
No, you really did.
Literally,
I had to argue, and I said, "Look, he is not coming out of this hospital until you guys figure out." They had bring in the hematologist. You were there longer than 3 days.
No, it was 3
Was
days.
it 3?
It was about 3 days.
But then when you came out, it was still like this.
Yeah.
It was a lot. So I know that.
Yeah, my hemoglobin levels, the what do you call it? The it's when you have the blood issue.
I don't know.
When you need the iron and stuff.
Oh yeah, your iron. Yeah. Well, I think it is.
What's it called?
I'm forgetting it right now.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, anemia. Anemia. That's it.
We're like anemic.
Yeah, anemia. So so you're anemic, which basically is the transportation of oxygen in your blood cells to your muscles and your functioning body. When that oxygen level starts getting lower, you're not getting as much oxygen. You're short of breath. Just all of these things.
He was fainting. It was not fun.
Yeah.
He was he would sway he was not steady on his feet. Not that he's the steadiest right now, but he was not. It was just really.
Yeah, it's like your equilibrium gets thrown out. I mean, it's weird, but there's so many things that go along with it. I mean, you think it's just a kidney and okay, I can't pee like I used to, but that's not it. I mean, that is part of it, but that is just the beginning.
But but honestly, their protocol is very strong at the facility. Like only he can go in. I can't go in and be there with him, even if I wanted to. I think there's only you've only told me 1 or 2 people where the exception has been made. Everybody is masked. They're super clean. They come, they clean everything all the time. Yeah. They keep it as a well-oiled machine. And maybe now that we're this many months into it, in the middle of a pandemic, our level of comfort.
Well, the thing is, they're doing everything they can do.
Yeah.
I mean, to keep that kind of stuff out of the facility. I still have to be very careful because of the lower immune system. When we go places, I try to avoid people as much as possible, and those types of things.
We just went out to dinner the other night.
Which everybody is doing. Yeah, there was probably.
We just went out to dinner the other night. We're like, yes, let's go out to dinner. We haven't done it in so long. I was like, there is no social distancing.
There was no social
None.
distancing. I mean, every chair in that restaurant was full of people.
And it made our daughter nervous.
Yeah.
She was like, there's no social. She's like, do we need to leave? And we were just already, that probably was my most uncomfortable.
Yeah, that was weird.
It's
But
all, it's all so new, what should we be doing? What should we not be doing? And it's hard
yeah.
to know.
But it also shows the problem that we're having with the pandemic. It's like people aren't even listening to the rules, and they're just doing what they want to do, and that's why it's escalating. So
And
much.
I'm
But
in defense of it too. It's like I see it in myself, just a lethargy, like a weakness, an exhaustion of holding it up, that I see the fatigue. I see the fatigue in my own behavior.
Yeah.
Someone who wants to be careful, who has a husband who at the beginning of this thing, I would get naked at our door and put my clothes in the washroom. I wouldn't even walk in our house with my clothes on, because I really was the only variable that was going out into the world. So I'm like, I believe, and I see my own defenses, waning and getting smaller and shorter. And it's because of this fatigue. But yeah, but I think we're doing the best we can.
yeah, and the facilities are certainly doing the best they can. I mean, used to you just walk right in, you go up to the counter, you say, "Hi, I'm here for my appointment." Now it's stand in line outside, wait for your turn to get your temperature taken, then that gives you approval to possibly go inside, and then you still don't get to talk to anybody. They take you straight back to the room, and they do their testing, or you take your labs, or you meet with the doctor real quick, and that's it. So it's a completely different process now that the pandemic is here, because everybody's trying to follow certain protocols and keep everybody as safe as possible, especially in our medical
Yeah.
our medical facilities. But yeah, it's a lot. It's definitely a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's a lot.
I appreciate you painting
Yeah.
a picture of what that's like. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, no
Thank
problem.
you.
Shay, I want to go back a little bit. So, leading up to the transplant, so through the diagnostic period, you were a real estate agent at the time, and you really weren't sharing what was happening in your personal life. And
Yeah.
slowly, you start sharing your story with people.
Yeah.
And I want to know what happened that changed that you started sharing. Why did you decide to start talking about your situation?
That's such a good question. I think I started doing it because I couldn't take the bifurcation any longer. I couldn't take this segmenting out my life any longer, and interfacing with my husband, who was facing a serious disease. The 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 saying that life is short, that is real, that really is real, and I felt the realness of it, and I just did not have time to keep creating the narratives that made you comfortable and made me and allowed me to segment out my life. I was like, look, this is the flip who I am, and what I'm doing is, yes, I'm selling you real estate, but as I'm selling you real estate, I have a husband who has a mortal illness, that I fear, and I think about how to support our daughter, how that she's not like overwrapped with fear. Because I just told him the other night when we were in bed, I said, do you know what the number one thing I feared when I was Kaya's age? That my parents would die. I remember feeling that. And I said, she is actively in it, and she doesn't like to talk about it, and she gets whatever, because that's the level of emotional
It's
maturity
defense
she
level.
has. Yes.
Yeah.
But so I think I didn't have the energy to hold it up. It takes a lot of energy to have this bifurcated life. And I didn't have the energy anymore. So just like I just told you about the mental fatigue, when going to a restaurant that clearly had no social distancing, there was a mental fatigue. Like I was just like, this is who I am. And human beings are amazing. What are you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, and also along with the kidney process, I think gave her more of an ability to do that, because she became my kidney advocate.
That's true. I forgot about that.
So
I was
even though I had a
designated.
friend who said he would give me a kidney, the odds are kidney's not going to match. So we still have to be advocating for a kidney. So she was talking to everybody she could to
Yeah.
let them know that, hey, my husband's in this
It's true.
situation,
I forgot about that.
and really advocating for me in order to find a kidney.
Because the idea is that
Right.
the kidney the recipient, he or she shouldn't have to be in a space always asking, can I have a kidney? Can I have a kidney? There needs to be an advocate, an ally for that person who asks, who
Yeah.
makes the hard asks.
Yeah.
So he
It
doesn't
makes-
have to.
It makes it known.
Yeah.
Really, you're just making it known. You're not necessarily saying, "Hey, can I have your kidney?" But
Sometimes
you're like,
no.
"This is what we're going through. This is where my husband's at." But you would be amazed. There were probably 12 or 15 people who stepped up just that she had met, and some were just almost strangers that offered up kidneys.
I just had an email last week, no, 2 weeks ago, from a girl I went to college with that I truly have not seen. And I would not have even remembered her name. And I'm certain I would have thought she wouldn't have remembered my name. She DM'd me. She lives in New York City, and she just DM'd me because people know that my husband's back on dialysis. So they know, oh, shoot, because they were following the transplant, story. And she's like, hey, whenever you're ready to talk or you want, I'd really love to see if I'm a match for your husband. I literally just responded to her. I said, this has overwhelmed me. I want you to know that I see this and I feel every bit of it. Thank you. I'll get back to you. I just needed her to know immediately that I saw it. But I think the reason why I love saying that, I'm so thankful for you to ask that question. A, what made me stop? And then also, what was the response of the people around me? Human beings, I will never stop believing this. We have the capacity to be beyond amazing. Like just how when you were asking me what made me keep going when the things got difficult, because we have the capacity to do a lot of hard stuff, harder than we ever hoped or even thought we would have to, harder than we could have ever anticipated. Well, just like that, human beings have the capacity to show up gloriously in each other's lives.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot more good out there than you think.
There really is.
Yeah.
I will go down believing that.
Yeah.
Good will always outweigh the bad.
My favorite story was the one where the lady came to you at the salon.
Oh,
That was amazing.
that was true. Yeah, she just overheard me talking about it. Overheard me getting my nails done. I told you this, right? Overheard me talking about it, getting my nails done. We're laughing, and because his buddy who gave him his kidney, he has a sense of humor. He's that guy who just holds court in a room and you just want to laugh at everything he says. And they were, one of the things, did you know that makes you a high risk donor is whether or not they have a whole list of questions, none of which he had. But one of the questions is, have you ever been to jail, even just like county jail, for more than 48 hours? You're considered high risk. If you've ever had male on male unprotected sex. And Barry, who is completely married and a heterosexual, loves gay people, fine. He goes, I use protection every time. That was his answer to that question. And so I was telling this, and this lady overheard me, and she came up to me when I was paying, and I really thought I was about to be chastised because I was being so loud, because I could feel everybody laughing and holding on to this story. And she was like, hey, I overheard you, and I don't know what I would do if that was my life, if my husband or my boyfriend was experiencing that. She said, my brother and I just made a pact this year that we want to donate a kidney. Can I give you my information? She said, I'm not a mother. I will never be a mother. I'm very healthy and I have all the money I need. Can we exchange information? This like middle-aged white lady who looked all like, I literally thought, oh, she's about to be like, girl, you are being too loud in my nail space. And she didn't. She came over to exchange information with me and see if she could be tested to be a kidney donor. And then sent me a photo, because I had packets. Then sent me a photo a week later of her at the post office, putting it in the mail. Unbelievable. People are amazing.
Yeah. And you know what I sometimes think is that had it not been for this journey, had it not been for Matthew needing a kidney, for you being his advocate, you would have never seen people in this way and that's
Right.
kind of the beauty of, if you were just sort of going forth and doing real estate and Matthew is healthy, you wouldn't have seen human beings in this way that you did. And
True, Matthew.
you saw people step up in such an extraordinary way, in such a selfless way, in a way that shows that strength of community. And I think that that's just incredibly inspiring.
Yeah,
And that's a
it
big,
really is, because, we are fed so much with television, everything, all the negativity that's in the world, and we don't stop to see what's really great.
Yeah.
And it's hard to see sometimes through the lens of, what's going on, but it's there. You just have to take time to recognize it and see it. And I think God gives us things like this, to go through so that we can see those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So, overall, it's been a rattling experience. It's been,
that's a good word.
it's been just a lot of every emotion you can think of. But, at the end of the day, there's also good things that have come out of it. So being able to see that people are willing to step up and do things like that,
But you had to have the difficulty for
Right.
people to step up
well,
to.
you had to be in
That's
the
the thing.
situation.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's just making people aware of your situation, because they're willing to do it. But if you don't ever let them know you're the situation you're in, or ask them, they
They don't even
they
know how to
don't they
help.
don't know what to they don't know how to help, right? They don't know what to do. So that was really the big part of having Shay as an advocate, was just let the story be known, just put it out there. um,
That's
so,
good, man.
yeah.
Well, and it's funny because Shay, you and I share a passion around telling stories, and
Yeah.
I'm sharing your story just for exactly this reason that we're talking about here. And I think it's so important. And I think sometimes it can be very difficult to share our story. And Shay, just from your perspective, I mean, you've interviewed so many people. Why do you think telling our stories is so important?
Um, I think that telling our stories is critical, because when we tell our stories, we invariably tell bits of other people's stories. And when we tell bits of other people's stories, they see themselves in us and we see ourselves in them. And all the things that make us think of the bad guys versus the good guys, and those and them and us, start to disappear, because we're all just trying to live our lives. We're all just trying to do the best that we can. We all are just trying to occupy the space of life that we were all brought to this planet for. And when we interact with each other's stories, we see the same motivations, we see the same compassions, we see the same flaws, we see the same beauties. So today is Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Maybe I'm not supposed to say that.
Oh, please do.
Okay.
Why not?
Yes.
Just because I was like, I don't know when you're gonna. So today is the celebration of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And why? One of the things I just put out today was like, I don't want to hear one person tell me about how many affairs he had. Because the point of him is not perfection. The point is, in our flawed and brokenness, we can show up and be amazing. We can do amazing stuff. And we learn that we can do that when we see other people reaching and doing that, despite their flaws, despite their flaws. So I just know that it's important. It's actually critical for our humanity that we share our stories with each other.
Yeah, and I think the stories just really point out to people that we're all just people.
That's right.
We're all just people trying to navigate this world, and almost every one of us is navigating something very similar to someone else.
That's right.
You're either having a hardship in finances, you're having a hardship in physical things, or you're having, other issues. So when you talk about it and you share that with other people, they see and feel your pain in the same way that they know that there's somebody out there with them that is going through the same type of thing. And and then it also, for me, it just makes all of the racist ideologies and things in the world just seem so ridiculous. Because at the end of the day, you know, whether you are Asian or African American or white or whatever, you're just a person,
Trying to
right?
live.
Just a person trying to live. And
Mhm.
whether or not your skin is a little bit darker than this person's skin, who cares?
But the
What
story
difference does it make?
humanizes it. The
Right?
story
The
is what.
story
Mhm.
makes it say that that is so ridiculous that you would even talk about that,
Mhm.
because we can be talking about these stories and sharing with each other and lifting each other up rather than tearing each other down,
Or
you
connecting with
know,
each
and
other on these
connecting.
very similar things. You're like, oh, that that happened to me. That's the thing about it. Like, oh,
Yeah,
I felt that too.
right.
And they might have felt it in a different context. They might have felt it in a different era. They might have felt it in a different nation. But pain is pain. Difficulty is difficulty. Beauty is beautiful. Like that stuff doesn't change. And if I know that you have experienced pain and I too am experiencing pain, I feel connected to you. I think our sharing our stories does nothing but bring us together.
Yeah. And maybe you found a way to navigate it that that other person never even thought about,
Yeah,
right? And so something that's helped you
I
can then
mean,
help them,
tennis, just volleying it.
whatever, you know,
absolutely.
whatever it may be. So
Well, in
yeah, I
fact,
think sharing human experiences is vital. I
Mhm.
mean, it is.
Matthew, you just touched on something that I think is critically important. It's one of the missions of my podcast, and that is when we're in the midst of it and we're there for the first time, we may not know how to go forward. And so, by having somebody who shared their story or shared what worked for them, gives that person a kernel of, oh, I didn't think about that. Maybe that would help me too. And so, Matthew, are there resources that you found particularly useful as you have been navigating this experience?
Um, for me, it was just educating myself a lot and understanding what I was up against, what I was facing. I did a lot of research on the internet. I listened to what the doctors had to say. I, anytime we met someone who had been through the kidney process, we learned as much as we could from them. Yeah, it's not something that you need to just duck your head in the sand and say, hey, I've got this kidney problem. I don't have a chance. You have a chance, right? You have a chance. And there are other people out there who can help you see that. You just have to look for it. Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
And Shay, how about you?
Honestly, people. I
Yeah.
think the resources that I would
Mhm.
say is people, you know. Um, there are people who want to support you. There are people who want to help. There are people who want to listen. There are people who want to love you. And that's been a huge resource for me because it's taken it out of the clinical, out of, I think, out of the cerebral, and it made it feel really in the heart. And so I just talk to people like that lady that I met who is actually a researcher in a kidney lab. I met her at a party, at a cocktail party, over a few beers and a glass of wine. And so people have been my resource,
Yeah, for sure.
like you.
Yeah, likewise.
Mhm.
We touched upon this a little bit earlier, and that's the unexpected gifts that come out of something that in the moment feels so
Yeah.
devastating. And Matthew, I know that one of the things that you mentioned was just seeing this incredible humanity. What other gifts have come out of your experience?
Oh man, so many things. Just patience, more reliance on God. Just knowing that there's something bigger than me that controls all of these things, and there's really nothing that I can do about it, but just keep day to day putting my head down
Mhm.
and doing what I need to do, and uh, just trusting that things are going to work out. Because if you go into it with a negative attitude, that's certainly not going to help you, right?
Mhm.
So any way I could find to try and stay positive, that has been very helpful for me.
And that's actually, to be honest, that is a kernel of greatness because his natural propensity isn't to find the goodness. It's to be like, "Yeah, these people, this is this thing. It's never gonna work." So it made him dive in. I mean, we would have sometimes conflicts. So I'm like, you can't think about it like that. You can't just see it like that. And I think it made you dive in to believe that it had to be better.
For sure.
Because otherwise, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're just waiting to die.
that's it.
I mean,
You know,
you can't live like that.
you know, his father, yeah, anyway, was saying something. I was like, look, every medical intervention we give between now and the day we die is trying to put off the inevitable.
Right.
So don't minimize when someone has a medical issue that they were going to die from. Every medical issue essentially left unchecked, we're going to die from. and our intervention to said medical help or problem, I should say, is in an attempt to put off the inevitable. But we don't put it off. We don't not get the treatment, right? So for me, my brilliance that I felt out of this is just really how damn good people are. People are good. And you know what? More importantly, people want to be good. They want to be good. They want to do good. One of the first things I learned when you learn about like serial killers or murderers, the first thing you should do when you're in interaction with someone who wants to cause you grave bodily harm is you make yourself human. You appeal to your humanity and their humanity, because deep down, we want to be good to each other.
I totally am in agreement with you. So I have just a couple of questions left. And Matthew, I want to ask you what your greatest hope is.
Well, my greatest hope for sure would be that the next time that a kidney becomes available, that it would work and that I could foresee, 15, 20 years into the future, rather than just maybe a few years into the future while I'm on dialysis. So a kidney, an operating kidney that worked would be fantastic and would just really take a lot of pressure off. I mean, we would still know there were issues there, but just to be able to see and function and do things the way I used to be able to do, that's what's, can get so depressing. Because, used to, I like to go out and play golf. I like to do all these things. I don't have the energy to do it anymore, And so basically you just wind up being at home and being on dialysis and being back at home and being on dialysis. And it just gets very difficult. And then you're watching your wife try to hold up everything while you are really struggling yourself and can't really help the way you want to, right? So, a very good functioning kidney that would change our lives. It would change our lives.
Ooh, it would change our life. Yep. I think my greatest hope would be that he would regain. Some of my hope probably lives in the land of miraculous, but you asked me what my greatest hope was, and there are no rules. My greatest hope would be that he would not just regain, it would be even better than he ever remembered in terms of his abilities, that he finds his thing, that he has a sense of purpose around his excellence, because I've seen that fall off. I see that he doesn't feel excellent. I feel that he doesn't feel sharp and smart. And that does mess with the dynamic of our relationship, right? Because at the end, he's still a guy. He still wants to provide and he still wants to protect, but he doesn't do either right now, right? So my highest hope, my biggest hope right now, truly, is that my husband would get in, this is very vulnerable, but it's true, just get in his lane of where he is amazing and he sees himself rise.
Yeah. And certainly through all this, I've learned to appreciate things so much more, because you do. I mean, you have the reality of looking at death as a possibility, right? In this situation. And so now the little things, like I never thought about using the restroom before, right? But now when I can't urinate the way I need to keep my body functioning properly, that becomes a big thing. You're like, I wish I could do that.
Yeah.
It's the little things that you take for granted. You're like, man, that's really important,
Yeah.
I really need to be able to do that
'Cause peeing is good.
because peeing is good. Yeah,
Mhm.
right.
It
It's a good
is.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realize that you get to a point where you almost don't urinate, and some people don't. And so all of those toxins and things that your body expels through the bladder and the kidney, they're in your body,
You're uremic.
right? You
Your skin looks
you
yellowy.
get puffy, you have extra water that you're not getting rid of, and that's the purpose of dialysis. You go to dialysis to remove all of that,
Mhm.
and that's what keeps you going. But at the same time, it's not an easy process because I mean, in 2 days, I can gain 10 pounds of water weight.
We have a little joke in our family.
Yeah.
I would like to lose about 20 pounds right now. And sometimes I'm like, you think I can just, because when he goes to dialysis, he'll come back 10 pounds, 12 pounds lighter because of all that water. And sometimes I'm like, just one. I just want one treatment. Just one little treatment.
Yeah. Let me just go to dialysis
Can
twice.
I just get on dialysis? Just
Just
once.
for a moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that would help
Yeah.
me just really, because that's what this is. This is water weight.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
my
You've got
gosh.
anywhere from 3 to 4 kilograms of weight that comes off of you almost every session.
Yeah, those little things, I tell you. We
I
used to make
know.
fun of my mom because my mom had colon cancer, and every time she toots and she passes gas, she's like, "Ooh, thank you, Jesus," and we're like, "How about excuse me?" but but when you have colon cancer and they remove a good chunk of your colon, they will not let you out of the hospital until you pass gas. So those little things, it becomes these very biological, small things become big things that you're most grateful for.
Very real. Yeah.
Things that we all take for granted.
Yeah.
For sure. Every day.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, I have absolutely loved speaking with you both, and thank you so much for opening up. Before we close, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like people to know?
Become an organ donor.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that's what I
Oh,
would say is
absolutely. Yeah.
you don't realize how much it means to people that need it.
And you don't need it.
and you in this situation, we have 2 kidneys and we can live off of one. So it's easy to be able to help someone out that needs a kidney. Now there are other issues with hearts and things like that where you can't just give up your heart, but be a donor. If
But
something,
even a donor posthumously, like
right,
I'm a donor.
posthumously be a donor. I mean,
Yeah.
it's very important. It allows other people to live longer and just have longer and more quality of life.
Putting off the
It's
inevitable.
putting off the inevitable.
We all will die one day,
Right.
but let's give as many years as possible to any
Right.
particular person. And so the thing that I want to say is, yes, become an organ donor. And specifically a story that encourages that is just a couple of weeks ago, we were all getting our teeth cleaned, getting our 6-month clean. And they were asking me, how's Matthew? And, it's always a hard question for me to answer because in a moment I'm trying to this is going to old Shay, I'm a people pleaser in recovery. Where I don't want to say too deep because I want to keep it light, but I want to be authentic and real. And so I was like, I don't know why, but the way my doctor asked me, I started kind of crying in the seat. And she's so beautiful. To her credit, she just paused and stopped. And I just said, a part of me sometimes feels like a horrible person because we are praying and speaking and calling down his kidney to come to him. And I am so aware that I am asking for something that is going to be the result of the worst day of somebody else's life. And she let me say it, and she goes, Shay, I'm an organ donor, and it's not going to be the worst day of my life. I've done it because I want to give on. I want to pour into others. I want for other people to be able to use what I no longer want. She said, I just had a client who came in, one of our patients, and her husband just died last week, and he was an organ donor. And I can tell you this, the fact that his organs are going to help other people, it's a joy for her. It's actually not her worst day. And that really touched me because I felt a little dirty in a way praying for this thing, So I think what I would want to say is be an organ donor. And for those who are in my position, you're not a dirty person for wanting an organ from someone who passes. And that being the worst day of the people who love them, because it's not always the case. It is sometimes the greatest extension of that person still being here.
That's right. It allows them to live on.
Well, that's a beautiful place to end. I can't think of a better ending.
Thank you.
So I do want to go circle back to your hope, and I am sending you both such prayers of health and a functioning kidney. And I want to thank you so much for your time today. It's been such a pleasure. I've loved every minute of it.
Me
Yes,
too.
Thank you.
I love you,
Thank you.
Kirsten.
Thanks for allowing us.
Mm.
We enjoyed it.
You have a beautiful day.